The purpose of this experiment is to test and compare the coefficient of restitution of two balls, a golf ball and a ping pong ball, by dropping them in a controlled environment. We will determine the coefficient of restitution through an experiment in which the two balls are dropped at a set height, and then the peak height of the first bounce will also be measured. Then, using conservation of energy for the downward movement and the upward movement, we'll convert the peak heights of the upward and downward motion into velocities of separation and approach. And since the coefficient of restitution is the velocity of separation divided by the velocity of approach, dividing the two calculated values will yield the coefficient of restitution. The materials required to execute this experiment are a tape measure to measure the height of the ball, as well as tape to hold it against the wall to make measurement easier, a camera to record the ball's position over time and maximizing accuracy of the peak height found during the experiment after the bounce. And finally, test balls. We'll need the golf ball and the ping pong in order to test them. Both balls were dropped from an initial height of 24.5 inches. The golf ball bounced to a peak height of 19.625 inches, while the ping pong had a peak bounce at 18 inches. Using the potential energy at the drop point and the bounce peak, we were able to find the velocity of approach and separation. For the golf ball, the velocity of approach was 11.467 feet per second, and the velocity of separation was 10.63 feet per second. The resulting ratio was 0.895, and that ratio is the coefficient of restitution. The ping pong ball had the same velocity of approach, since the mass in the conservation of energy equation cancels in this case. So it approached at 11.467 feet per second, while it's separated at 9.829 feet per second. This yielded a ratio, or coefficient of restitution, at 0.857. The coefficient of restitution determines how well the balls will bounce. Since the golf ball has a higher coefficient of restitution, in future situations it should bounce better than the ping pong ball, which would make sense for the applications that the two balls are used for, since a golf ball is expected to impact against a golf club and fly as fast as it can from that impact. A ping pong ball needs a high coefficient of restitution as well, since it needs to bounce well on the ping pong table. The golf ball has a higher coefficient of restitution since it needs to bounce better and have a better transfer than the ping pong ball, but they both have high values because of their applications.